In 1991, the Five Heartbeats made us believe in brotherhood, music, and the dream of making it out alive. But fast forward to 2026, and almost nothing turned out the way fans imagined. Behind those voices were lives marked by loss, disappearances, illness, and quiet endings no one warned us about. Some of them you truly wouldn't recognize today. Robert Townsend as Donald "Duck" Matthews. Robert Townsend was born on February 6, 1957, in Chicago, Illinois. At 34 years old, he played Donald "Duck" Matthews, the outspoken moral compass of the group, in The Five Heartbeats. That performance anchored the story, giving its warnings about fame and exploitation a human center that audiences could feel. That same urgency followed him into his private life. Townsend married Cherry Jones in 1990, and as they raised 3 children, including actress Skye Townsend, his workload only intensified. While shaping projects that demanded total control, such as writing and directing Hollywood Shuffle, the marriage absorbed the strain of constant deadlines and creative risk. By 2001, the relationship ended in divorce, a fracture shaped by ambition colliding with domestic balance. The separation marked a shift rather than relief. Steering socially charged stories and sustaining momentum through television with The Parenthood came at an emotional cost that accumulated over time. Long stretches of responsibility, fundraising, and decision-making compressed into exhaustion, the quieter aftermath of independence in an industry that rarely cushions those who self-finance. Today, Robert Townsend is 69 years old and continues working as a filmmaker, mentor, and advocate for independent voices, developing projects while supporting emerging talent. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, his career reads as a testament to endurance, proof that Duck's voice, once unleashed, never stopped speaking. Michael Wright as Eddie King, Jr. Michael Wright was born on April 30, 1956, in New York City. At 35 years old, he played Eddie King, Jr., the volatile lead singer, in The Five Heartbeats. Eddie's unraveling propelled the film's emotional peaks, turning musical ambition into a portrait of pressure closing in from every side. That pressure seeped into his personal world. Wright married Mitzi Lau in 1994, hoping steadiness might counterbalance a demanding career shaped by intense roles such as Streamers, where his performance earned major acclaim. As opportunities fluctuated and schedules pulled them apart, the relationship struggled to find footing. By 2000, the marriage ended, signaling a decisive turn. Afterward, the focus narrowed. Continued work on television, including a long arc on Oz, carried psychological weight that accumulated alongside uneven visibility. The challenge became sustaining equilibrium amid shifting momentum, with each role demanding immersion and leaving little room for recovery. Today, Michael Wright is 70 years old, living largely outside the spotlight with only occasional acting work. His estimated net worth of about $500,000 reflects a career defined by intensity rather than accumulation, leaving behind performances, especially Eddie King, Jr., that linger long after the curtain falls. Leon Robinson as J.T. Matthews. Leon Preston. Robinson was born on March 8, 1962, in Bronx, New York. At 29 years old, he played J.T. Matthews, the gifted yet fragile falsetto voice, in The Five Heartbeats. J.T.'s vulnerability shaped the film's emotional stakes, turning success into a test of survival rather than celebration. That emotional exposure echoed beyond the screen. Leon's personal life settled into commitment with Patricia Blanchet. Yet the rhythm of touring, filming, and creative reinvention tested balance over time. As his profile expanded through roles like Cool Runnings and later the acclaimed portrayal of David Ruffin in The Temptations, professional momentum often demanded priority, creating strain that required constant recalibration at home. The pressure did not stop with scheduling. immersing himself in psychologically demanding performances while sustaining a parallel career as the frontman of Leon and the Peoples, whose album The Road Less Traveled reached the Billboard charts, meant carrying artistic intensity without pause. The toll showed up as exhaustion rather than illness, a cumulative weight from living inside characters who rarely found peace. Now, Leon Robinson is 64 years old and remains creatively active, balancing selective acting with music and live performance. With an estimated net worth of about $1.5 million, his career reads as a long arc of reinvention, where JT's voice became the beginning of a lifetime spent translating emotion into sound and story. Harry J. Lennox as Terrence Dresser Williams. Harold Joseph Lennox III was born on November 16, 1964, in Chicago, Illinois. At 27 years old, he played Terrence Dresser Williams, the disciplined, grounded backbone of the group, in The Five Heartbeats. Dresser's steadiness gave the film its sense of order, a counterweight to chaos that kept the band from collapsing sooner. That sense of discipline carried into adulthood and partnership. Lennox married Jana Graves in 2009, and the relationship endured demanding schedules as his career expanded across film and television. While long runs on projects like The Blacklist required sustained focus, both partners maintained stability by treating work as shared responsibility rather than competition. Professional intensity brought its own strain. Lennox's immersion in weighty roles, from Ray to the expansive world of The Matrix Reloaded, required physical and mental rigor shaped by years of stage training. Rather than illness, the challenge lay in endurance, managing the cumulative demands of theater, film, and television without losing equilibrium. Today, Harry J. Lennox is 62 years old and continues working across stage and screen, including leadership through his production company while taking selective acting roles. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his career reflects longevity built on restraint, much like Dresser himself, steady enough to last when others burned out. Tico Wells as Anthony Choirboy Stone. Tico Wells was born in 1961 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At 30 years old, he played Anthony Choirboy Stone, the pure-voiced soul of the group, in The Five Heartbeats. Choirboy's innocence and restraint gave the film its emotional contrast, reminding viewers what was at risk when ambition turned corrosive. That contrast mirrored Wells' own path. Raised amid economic and social pressure in Philadelphia, he found early direction through local acting classes and television work, gradually building momentum through appearances on The Cosby Show and films like Mississippi Masala, where his presence felt grounded rather than flashy. As his resume expanded to include action-driven projects such as Universal Soldier, Wells navigated a career defined by steadiness instead of spectacle. Away from the screen, his life remained deliberately contained. Wells kept his marital status and family details private, choosing balance over exposure while continuing to work across film and television, including independent features like Big Ain't Bad, which earned praise within black film circles. The consistency of his choices suggested a conscious resistance to the instability he witnessed growing up. Now, Tico Wells is 65 years old and continues acting selectively, maintaining a low-profile career built on longevity rather than headlines. With an estimated net worth of about $1.5 million, his legacy rests in quiet reliability, much like Choirboy himself, whose voice lingered long after the music stopped. Diahann Carroll as Eleanor Potter. Diahann Carroll was born on July 17, 1935, in Bronx, New York. At 56 years old, she played Eleanor Potter, the protective, dignified wife holding a fragile family together in The Five Heartbeats. Eleanor's presence added generational weight to the film, bridging youthful ambition with lived consequence. That gravity came from a life shaped early by discipline and prejudice. Carroll rose from a working-class upbringing into Broadway acclaim, breaking barriers with House of Flowers, and later redefining television through Julia, before earning critical recognition in Claudine. Each milestone brought visibility, but also isolation, as success unfolded inside an industry slow to accept a black woman in leading roles. Her private life carried even heavier burdens. Carol married 4 times, to Monty Kaye, Fred Glusman, Robert DeLeon, and Vic Damone, with unions marked by instability, abuse, sudden loss, and emotional exhaustion, alongside a long and painful relationship with Sidney Poitier that deepened her depression. In 1997, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, endured radiation treatment, and later faced recurrence and dementia, continuing to work through projects like White Collar even as her health declined. Finally, Diahann Carroll died on October 4, 2019, at 84 years old, at her home in West Hollywood, California, from natural causes following complications related to cancer. Remembered as a pioneer who reshaped American television and cinema, she left behind an estimated net worth of $20 million, a legacy measured not only in awards, but in doors opened for generations who followed. Hawthorne James, as Big Red Davis. Hawthorne James was born in 1949 in Chicago, Illinois. At 42 years old, he played Big Red Davis, the intimidating, calculating enforcer of the music industry in The 5 Heartbeats. Big Red's cold authority shifted the film's tone, embodying the threat that success could quickly turn predatory. That menace was shaped by discipline rather than chaos. Growing up in a poor Chicago household, James gravitated toward structure and craft, earning formal training at the University of Notre Dame and later the University of Michigan. His grounding in classical theater fed into a career built on presence and restraint, carrying him from stage work into defining screen moments in films like Speed and C7N, where silence often spoke louder than dialogue. As his reputation solidified, James chose focus over distraction. He never married and had no children, channeling energy into performance, teaching, and eventually directing, including the independent film The Stick-Up Kids. That singular commitment allowed him to move fluidly between acting and mentorship without the fractures that often follow divided priorities. Today, Hawthorne James is 77 years old and remains respected as a character actor and director with a long theatrical lineage. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his career stands as a study in control, much like Big Red himself, measured, deliberate, and quietly influential. Roy Fagan, as Bird. Roy Fagan was born on January 27, 1961, in Los Angeles, California. At 30 years old, he played Bird, the smooth, observant figure hovering on the edges of opportunity, in The 5 Heartbeats. Bird's subtle presence added texture to the film, reflecting how ambition often moves quietly before it announces itself. That subtlety reflected Fagan's own beginnings. Raised amid financial uncertainty in Los Angeles, he leaned early into creativity, breaking through with Hollywood Shuffle before expanding his profile in projects like The Meteor Man. Rather than chasing constant visibility, he diversified, moving between acting, producing, and writing, including work on the stage musical Treat Her Like a Lady. Stability followed him off-screen. Fagan married, became a father to Roshan Fagan, and kept his family life largely private while navigating Hollywood's shifting terrain. That balance allowed him to evolve behind the camera, eventually founding Black-owned TV, positioning himself as a cultural builder rather than only a performer. Now, Roy Fagan is 65 years old and continues working as a producer and media executive, shaping platforms as much as performances. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million, his legacy rests on expansion, using Bird's quiet instincts as a blueprint for longevity beyond the spotlight. John Canada Terrell as Michael Flash Turner. John Canada Terrell was born around 1960 in New York City. At 31 years old, he played Michael Flash Turner, the stylish, fast-talking member chasing momentum in the Five Heartbeats. Flash's restless energy added speed and edge, showing how ambition can sprint ahead of consequence. That instinct was shaped by a life oriented toward the stage. Growing up in New York, Terrell gravitated to performance early and broke through with Spike Lee's She's Gotta Have It, then expanded his screen presence with Death by Temptation and Boomerang, where charisma mattered as much as timing. The through line was versatility, moving easily between independent grit and studio polish. As the industry shifted, Terrell shifted with it. He stepped behind the scenes to produce projects like White Men Can't Rap, choosing authorship over constant visibility and turning experience into leverage. The transition softened the volatility of acting work while keeping him connected to the craft. Today, John Canada Terrell is 66 years old and works primarily as a producer, developing projects at his own pace. With an estimated net worth of about $500,000, his career reflects measured longevity, proof that Flash's hunger could mature into control. Tressa Thomas as Duck's baby sister. Tressa Thomas was born on July 31, 1978, in Waukegan, Illinois. At 13 years old, she played Duck's baby sister, the innocent witness to dreams and consequences, in The Five Heartbeats. Her brief presence humanized the stakes, grounding the story in family rather than fame. That grounding carried into a multifaceted path. Raised in the Chicago area amid early challenges, Thomas entered the arts young and moved fluidly between acting and music, appearing in films like Flatliners and lending her voice to tributes such as The Little Richard Story. Touring with Motown legends and sharing stages with icons broadened her reach beyond the screen. Creative ambition soon expanded behind the camera. Thomas produced the short film The Yesterday Pool, which gained festival attention and awards consideration, signaling a pivot towards storytelling with authorship. The progression from performer to producer brought steadier footing and creative ownership. Today, Tressa Thomas is 48 years old and continues working across music, performance, and production, developing projects with a long view. With an estimated net worth of about $500,000, her career reads as a quiet build, where a small role became the first note in a sustained, independent arc. Harold Nicholas as Sarge. Harold Lloyd Nicholas was born on March 27, 1921, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. At 70 years old, he played Sarge, the weathered elder whose presence carried history and warning, in The Five Heartbeats. Sarge did not drive the plot forward, but he deepened it, reminding the audience that fame always stands on the shoulders of those who paid the price first. That gravity came from a life forged early. Growing up amid racial barriers in the Jim Crow South, Nicholas found escape and discipline through dance alongside his brother, Fayard Nicholas, forming what would become the legendary Nicholas Brothers. From vaudeville stages to Hollywood milestones like Stormy Weather, their artistry redefined American tap, eventually earning Kennedy Center honors and a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, recognition long delayed but finally undeniable. Behind the applause, his private life fractured repeatedly. Nicholas married Dorothy Dandridge in 1942, a union shadowed by fame, distance, and pressure, ending in divorce in 1950. A later marriage to Eliane Patron also failed, reinforcing a pattern where professional brilliance came at the expense of emotional stability, even as he continued performing well into old age. Sadly, Harold Nicholas died on July 3, 2000, in New York City, at 79 years old, from heart failure. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million at the time of his death, his true legacy lay elsewhere, in a body of work that shaped generations, and in Sarge's quiet reminder that survival itself can be an act of endurance. Troy Beyer as Baby Doll. Troy Beyer was born in New York City in 1964. At 27 years old, she played Baby Doll, the seductive, emotionally volatile presence orbiting the band, in The Five Heartbeats. Baby Doll's role exposed the intimate cost of fame, turning desire into another form of risk. That tension echoed a childhood marked by instability. Raised within the foster care system, Byer endured abandonment and abuse that shaped both her resilience and her urgency to be heard. Early exposure through Sesame Street led to visibility on series like Dynasty, but acting alone could not contain the need to process lived trauma. Marriage offered no easy refuge. Byer wed Mark Berg in 1994, and they had a son, Jordan, yet the relationship collapsed by 2000, strained by emotional wounds and conflicting paths. During this period, she redirected her voice into authorship and filmmaking, writing and directing Let's Talk About Sex, and later channeling healing into self-help work and psychology. Today, Troy Byer is 62 years old and works primarily as a psychologist, author, and occasional filmmaker, largely removed from Hollywood's spotlight. With an estimated net worth of about $4 million, her career stands as a reinvention, where Baby Doll's vulnerability became the starting point for control, clarity, and survival. Teresa Randall as Brenda. Teresa Randall was born on December 27, 1964, in Gary, Indiana. At 27 years old, she played Brenda, the grounded emotional counterweight to ambition, in The 5 Heartbeats. Brenda's steadiness gave the story balance, showing how love often absorbs the shockwaves of fame. That balance was hard-won. Randall's early years unfolded between Gary and South Central Los Angeles, where poverty and neighborhood violence shaped caution and resolve. She entered film through Made to Order, then built momentum with textured supporting work that sharpened her presence, later stepping into bolder territory with Girl 6, a role that demanded vulnerability while exposing the industry's darker appetites. As visibility grew, so did pressure. Moving between studio hits and riskier projects, from Bad Boys to independent character-driven parts, required adaptability as opportunities cooled after the late 1990s. The uneven rhythm pushed her toward selective choices rather than constant exposure, preserving control when momentum wavered. Now, Teresa Randall is 62 years old and retired from acting, having stepped away after returning for Bad Boys for Life. With an estimated net worth of about $3 million, her career reads as a deliberate arc, impactful performances, guarded exits, and a legacy defined by restraint. Chuck Patterson as Jimmy Potter. Chuck Patterson was born on February 11, 1945, in Memphis, Tennessee. At 46 years old, he played Jimmy Potter, the commanding, conflicted leader whose fall reverberates in The 5 Heartbeats. Jimmy's authority and unraveling anchored the film's tragedy, turning success into a reckoning. That gravity came from a life steeped in craft. Raised amid hardship, Patterson gravitated early to the stage, earning deep respect in theater before crossing to film. His work on Broadway, including Death of a Salesman, earned him an Obie Award, and that rigor translated on screen, measured, muscular, and unsentimental. Home life offered both support and strain. Married to Corey Thomas, with a daughter Natasha, Patterson balanced family against the demands of stage and screen, often prioritizing rehearsal rooms over red carpets. The discipline that elevated his performances also narrowed the margins of rest. Sadly, Chuck Patterson died on December 23, 2013, in Harlem, Manhattan, at 68 years old, from health complications. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000 at his death, his legacy rests less in accumulation than in authority, Jimmy Potter's warning echoing as the final note of a career built on weight and truth. Kasi Lemmons as Cookie. Kasi Lemmons was born on February 24, 1959, in St. Louis, Missouri. At 32 years old, she played Cookie, the watchful, emotionally intelligent presence on the edge of the band's world, in The 5 Heartbeats. Cookie's quiet clarity steadied the story, offering perspective when ambition threatened to blur everything else. That clarity was shaped early. After her parents divorced, Lemmons followed her mother to Boston, learning to adapt while holding on to creative focus. Acting opened doors, but it also sharpened her instincts about storytelling, pushing her beyond performance toward authorship and control. The pivot became visible as she transitioned from roles into writing and directing, laying the groundwork for films that would soon carry her unmistakable voice. Marriage brought continuity rather than conflict. Lemons married Vondie Curtis Hall in 1995, and together they raised 2 children, including actor Henry Hunter Hall, balancing family with an expanding creative slate. As her directing career flourished, marked by Eve's Bayou, which earned an Independent Spirit Award, and later Harriet, which garnered major awards recognition, her personal life remained a stabilizing force, not a casualty of success. Today, Kasi Lemmons is 67 years old and continues working as a filmmaker, writer, and educator, shaping stories while mentoring new voices. With an estimated net worth of about $5 million, her career reflects deliberate evolution. Cookie's composure transformed into authorship, influence, and lasting authority behind the camera. O.L. Duke as Monroe. Orville Lewis. Duke was born on August 12, 1953, in the United States. At 38 years old, he played Monroe, a grounded, observant figure moving quietly within the group's orbit, in The 5 Heartbeats. Monroe's restrained presence added realism to the film, reflecting the many unseen figures who sustain success without ever standing at the center. That restraint was rooted in discipline, rather than spotlight. Duke trained rigorously and became a respected member of the Actors Studio, committing himself to method acting and stagecraft. His career unfolded largely in theater, where depth mattered more than fame, and he later took on a leadership role as interim artistic director of the Negro Ensemble Company, guiding and teaching young black actors while continuing to perform in demanding stage productions. His personal life also shaped more by work than by public relationships. Duke devoted his energy to teaching, mentoring, and performing, often returning home late from rehearsals and off-Broadway shows, sustaining a rhythm defined by commitment rather than balance. Sadly, O.L. Duke died on September 10, 2004, in New York City, at 51 years old, following a car crash on the West Side Highway after finishing an off-Broadway performance. He left behind an estimated net worth of about $1 million, but his true legacy lived on in the actors he trained and the discipline he embodied, Monroe's quiet steadiness echoing long after the curtain fell. They gave us the rhythm, the passion, and the heartbreak that defined the 5 Heartbeats. But decades later, their real lives took turns far more dramatic than anything on screen. Which cast transformation shocked you the most? And which story stayed with you long after the music faded? If you want more then and now stories you'd never recognize, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next.